Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Taz, and today I'm going to cover my top 11 hardest bosses from Lords of the Fallen released in 2023. Before we get into that list, let's try to appease the YouTube algorithm. If you are new here and you like what you see, hit the sub button, turn the bell for notifications, and be sure to like the video. This is the place to be for obscure games, let's plays, reviews, reactions. And now that I've covered all that boring stuff, let's get to the video. Lords of the Fallen was released October 13th, 2023. Developed by Hexworks and published by CI Games, it released to mixed reviews but remains mostly positive on Steam. This is a top boss list, so I don't want to go into a full review. I will say I did stream this game. I had my fair share of crashes and issues. However, overall, I thought it was a good game. The world setting was unique, switching between the living and the umbral worlds, tons of loot and builds to pick between. The biggest credit I will give to this game was the constant updates for quality of life and content. This game even has modifiers from random loot, enemies, health, you name it. You don't see minigames do that these days, so they get a huge kudos for that. But now that I've covered all that, let's get into how I made my picks for this list. First and foremost, this list is for the main bosses. I know that's a loose term. However, this game had a ton of sub-bosses that just became elite enemies after you beat them, or just one-off fights for some good loot. So I'm really only focused on the ones tied to the Echoes of Remembrance located in the main hub area. If you know what I'm talking about, you go into the vessel and you can see and fight past bosses. Those are the ones we're going off of. Also, being a list, it's open for debate, and I'd love to hear what others think, because I am pretty biased on this, because I'm not very good at these games. There really is no set factors that determine this list, mainly just my experience from when I streamed it. However, looks, arena, and second phases will weigh in on some of these bosses. And to start off our pitiful list is number 11, and it's a deer. Yeah, that's right. The final boss for the Radiance ending is number 11. No other boss could be this low, and it's why I'd even bother to get footage of it. The main baddie the game wants you to stop from being reborn, and how do you fight it? You run around and smack a deer's followers until you win. It doesn't get more anticlimactic than that, and that's why it's number 11 on this list. I don't know what else to say. Terrible boss fight for the final. At number 10, I picked the Hollow Crow fight. Much like the Adir fight, you don't go after the main body, instead you fight the ghost floating around that appears every now and then, using your Umbral Lamp to stun it, get a few good smacks in, rinse and repeat so you can strike the crow for the final blow. There wasn't anything too amazing about this fight, it's just crowd control until you can stun the ghost. One thing I will say is, if you're not careful, there are a few chilly attacks that can end you quickly if you don't pay attention. Overall, didn't wow me, but still a good boss fight. Coming in at number 9 is Spurned Progeny. Much like the other two fights before Spurned, this is kind of a gimmick boss fight to a degree. You first start out by fighting at the feet of the giant, only for it to spew Inferno all over the floor, making you retreat to higher ground. From there, it's a lot of dodging and waiting for the right moment for the hand to come out of the mouth again so you can strike and do the actual damage. Range attacks can make a difference in this fight, sometimes easier, sometimes not, but it really wasn't a hard boss fight. Despite being so low on the list, it has one of the coolest attacks in the game when it goes nuclear, but that's why it's at number 9. And at number 8 is the Conjugator of Flesh. This boss speaks for itself. It's a giant flesh ball thing. I don't know how to describe it. It's fleshy. This fight pretty much gets forced onto you pretty early in the game, and most aren't prepared for that. It doesn't have many attacks. I mean, it doesn't really even have arms. It's just a rotting corpse with 2 mouths. The arena is small, it has protection hiding in the Umbral Realm that's easily taken care of, and there could be a few status effects that build up if you aren't careful. In addition, there are a few devastating moves that can one-shot early game players. Again, not a hard boss, just ones you're not prepared for because you don't see it coming. It's a surprise. Other downsides, small arena, giant boss, camera angles work against you. It probably smells bad. So that's why it's number 8. At number 7 is Pieta, she of Blessed Renewal. She's the first major hurdle after the Holy Bulwark auto, but he's more of a get used to things boss, not an actual boss. You gotta beat him, but I'm getting off track. Pieta is considered a Dami Mami, towering over you as heresy has taken over her mind. The first half of the fight is manageable, then getting her near 50%, she brings out her big radiant attacks that devastate early players. She's also high on this list for a move of stabbing you and then cradling you to the ground. Overall, great boss fight, and she may appear again later. That's Rounding out the bottom of this list is the Hushed Saint, the first major boss tied to an ending and progression at number 6. This boss can be a bit of a challenge due to two factors. The first being he could ride around on his horse, disappear, only to reappear somewhere else. This, compounded with the size of the map, does not make for a good time your first couple go arounds. Maybe you're good, maybe you're not, but it can definitely be a factor. The second factor is the long range attacks and his AoE attacks. They can be absolutely devastating and take up a large area of the arena. There is one thing that can make this fight easier. Around the map are little umbral stems with little eyeballs that, when paired with the lamp and timed right, it will cause the Saint to fall off his horse. Overall, good. No, I'm going to say great. Great first major boss, honestly, from design and all that. Just the arena was too large and the horse is kind of meh. But, you know, still up there. Number 6. Let's see what cracks the top 5 now. Deciding who would round out the top 5 wasn't easy. All bosses from here on out were a challenge or downright hard without summoned help. So to start off the top 5, I chose Tancred, Master of Castigens, and Reinhold the Immured. Probably said a couple of those wrong. This two-phase boss fight is fought in a small, dingy arena, with the first phase being Tancred not being too hard, but can still be a challenge. A lot of the attacks can be paired, and there are some summons that can be brought in, which again helps with the fight. Upon second phase, Reinhold takes over in a gruesome manner, and the entire fight just shifts. Like, it's actually probably one of the coolest scenes in the entire game, if I'm being honest. Second phase is definitely a challenge, but again, a lot of the moves can be parried. You just got to keep moving if you want to win. This one is middle of the game, but again, it's just the way that they transitioned this boss fight was absolutely amazing, and I don't think there's a better transition from phase 1 to phase 2 than this one right here, because it's just gruesome and epic. But yeah, so that's going to round out the top 5. Let's go see what... Coming in at number 4 is the second Dami Mami of the game, Judge Cleric, the Radiant Sentinel. Another two-phase fight, with the first half consisting of Radiant-like attacks as the Judge Cleric looms over our tiny character. There are some moves, if you're caught in, it's game over. I mean, there's just too many to dodge. It's game over if you get caught in them. If you're able to move past the first phase, Dami Mami becomes more grotesque, a more bleak appearance, switching to Inferno attacks. This phase is all about AoE, laser beams, and just staying alive. I'll be honest, those laser beams are terrible. Overall, great fight. Loved it. More mid to end game. It can be tough, but that's why it's so high on the list. You've also noticed that a lot of these bosses have two phases pretty much going forward, but that is why Judge Cleric is at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is the Sundred Monarch, big ol' king man. Another huge boss that looms over the player who is looking rough when encountered. I really struggled with putting this one so high on the list, mainly because it doesn't seem like a hard fight at first. However, the Monarch deals massive damage, is quick, and when he grabs you, he does a devastating slam attack. The arena is the perfect size for a fight of this caliber, probably the best out of all the ones on this list. And there is a quest line for an item that can help cheese this fight if you want. It's a lengthy quest line, but it can be worth it. I tried it once, and I'm going to be real, it made it pretty easy, but I still had to put in work to beat the king himself. Overall, it made number 3 because of its design and still being a better final boss over Adir. Truly, I thought this was going to be the last fight. No, it was Adir. I'm still upset about Adir, but this could have been a better final boss than him. So yeah, overall for the design, I mean, the fact that he's slamming around with the giant head of his wife and throwing swords from his back is just absolutely epic. Coming in the runner-up spot of number 2 is the Light Reaper. And let me tell you, this boss is a menace anytime it's encountered during this game. I think it's like 3, maybe 4 tops. But the final one is by far the worst. First off, my biggest complaint is the arena is littered with breakable objects you can get stuck on. He flies in on his bees during a good portion, spewing fire everywhere, just causing that AoE. And that's just the start. When the Light Reaper finally dismounts, it's an onslaught of attacks. The Light Reaper is quick, using its 4 arms to slash at the player, unleashing long-range attacks as well. One can make an argument that this should have been the final boss, but yeah, it wasn't. I still don't get it. Like, I get the whole thing was to stop Adir, but I thought, you know, the Light Reaper was working for Adir to resurrect him, get rid of all the lamp bearers, etc. This should have been the final boss for the Radiant ending, period. And then you can go smash Adir or do whatever, but it should have been this boss. Hands down, I think the second hardest boss fight, bar none, but there is one worse boss that is yet to come. Now, what's a top list without an honorable mention? And here, for Lords of the Fallen, we have Herer Derelva, the Pledge Knight, and the Unbroken Promise as the honorable mention, due to the fact that I beat it first try when I originally played the game. Overall, the boss arena is great, but the hero is pretty easy. I'll admit, Phase 2 stunned me with this transformation, how cool it looked, but it still wasn't that tough for an in-game boss. Also, the boss wasn't tied to a beacon, more the Umbral ending if you wanted that, so another reason why he got honorable mention. It's a lot of withering attacks, and they're pretty easy to dodge, as you can see here in the footage. I liked it, it was good, but I think this is like one of the only bosses I first tried, so that's why it gets honorable mention. So, without further ado, let's get to the Menace of Menaces for bosses of this game. So what would be the number one boss for this list then? We've covered so many. Well, she's already made an appearance earlier, but in a more normal form. This boss is tied to the Umbral ending, which is arguably the hardest ending to get out of the four. That's right, I'm referring to Elaine the Starve. This boss is bound to drive a player to quit in their quest to beat her. There is a mixture of radiant damage, wither damage, but that's not all. There are Seek and Umbral eyeballs. Elaine can split into two forms with her base form and then a specter-like form with its own full health bar. And yeah, you gotta take that one out too just to damage her main body. When this happens, the amount of attacks that get launched at you is absolutely insane, far worse than the Light Reaper. It can be very hard to keep up with. Because of all that, that is why this is the hardest boss in Lords of the Fallen. It even made me rage quit before I finally returned to beat it nearly a year later. And let me tell you, it still wasn't easy. It still took dozens of tries, and I'm not gonna lie, I had to cheese it to finally get that ending and that achievement. And I regret it. It was a tough fight, but I don't think anything could be tougher than Elaine the Starve. If you've never fought this boss, go try. And let me know down in the comments how well you did against this menace of a boss. I hated it. It was awful, but it is what it is. But that's going to do it for this list. I hope to do more in the future. Be sure to check out the other videos, shorts, and swing by for a live stream. Comment down below. Let me know if I got this right. Do you agree with me? Should a boss have been somewhere else? I'm always trying to come up with new ideas for entertainment and content on this channel. And if you want to check out a live stream, I typically have them posted for scheduling in the future so you can see when they're coming up. Times do vary. So with that being said, thanks for watching. I hope you like the content, and we'll catch you in the next one or in a live stream.